Hey, it's Chris Timmerman with Tactical Defense Institute. Doing a video tonight to address some questions I get from students in our rifle classes a lot. Just got an email from a student the other day who's looking to build his first AR-15, primary fighting rifle, so to speak, taking a lot of handgun classes, but wants to get into the rifle realm in 2026. So I'm going to talk about some of the setups I have, why I have them set up how they are, some pros, some cons, some things that hopefully might help you out if you're looking to acquire and build or set up your first AR-15 or modify an existing platform, maybe upgrade it. And hopefully they'll save you some money and not buying stuff you find out you don't like, or at least give you a little bit of insight for what you want. So I'm going to start with my primary rifle, right? Some of these are pretty specific built. So the first one that I have here, I built from the ground up. All right, it's a 11.5-inch SBR. So I use predominantly PRI parts. I got a Faxon barrel, PRI upper, PRI gas block. It's on my Form 1 Daniel Defense lower. All right, and I wanted a compact package, right? So being an 11.5, and I knew I was going to run it dedicated suppressed, I wanted to have it as maneuverable as I could. It's not something I want to be running out to 500 and 600 yards, right? You start to lose muzzle velocity when you start chopping that barrel length back. Generally accepted, you can say somewhere between 40 to 50 feet per second per inch of barrel that you cut off. When you're coming from 16 down to that 12, you start to lose a little bit more than that. I've seen some reports that say as much as 70 to 75 feet per second when you start going down to the 11.5 to the 10.5, just because you have less time for the powder to burn and propel that bullet, right? But if you're not going for long engagements, right, at far distances, and you're looking for a compact tight package, it's predominantly going to be CQB driven or close quarters engagement work, then, to minimize my overall length with the suppressor, it was worth it for me, right? So, I'm not going to get into all the details of everything on it, right? But I went with an 11.5, right? I think every good fighting rifle needs to have a quality light. So I got a Surefire 640 turbo on here, dedicated suppressor 556, my IR laser illuminator for my nods, right? Whether you like vertical foregrips or don't like them, whatever works for you. Running a Midwest Industries combat rail on it, all right, and a B5 system stock. So getting into the trigger, it's a Geissele SSA trigger. I like Geissele products. I mean, I got a lot of different good triggers, but I've always liked my Geissele triggers. The optic setup, I'm running a Trijicon Credo 1:4, a second focal plane, a low power variable optic, and a Reptilia mount with a Holosun 507 on top, right? So the reason I like having both, you could say, well, it's a variable power 1:4. I can run it 1 power, and honestly, for a long time, I did run it as just a standalone optic with that scope, running it in that 1 power for anything up close, and then flipping over to 4 for anything at distance. I wouldn't need the dot, and I didn't need it. Where the dot is really there predominantly is I can leave this flip to 4, right, and eliminate the time it takes for me to go from CQB work with the dot to a long distance identification or engagement shot longer distance with an 11.5. But predominantly, I'm using it as a riser mount for when I run my night vision, right? So you see a lot of guys that are running standalone dots. They have real tall, Unity risers, right? Or they're running like a 227 mount because you can't tilt your head down nearly as well, if at all, to get sight picture on a dot when you're running night vision. By running, something tall, I'm essentially thinking, why run just a super tall mount when I can have increased capabilities, right? I can have the magnified if I want it, as well as the dot. And when I'm running that night vision, it also allows me to keep that head very straight up and just bring it right up in front of my, my nods device right there. So it kind of serves dual purpose. Add some weight for sure. Between the optic and the mount, I'm adding, I forget the exact numbers, 18 ounces-ish, 21 ounces, somewhere in there. Call it right around 20 ounces of extra weight, right? But I like the capability of it if I need it for that accuracy. So this can, it's a Spec War 556K, right about 6.5 inches. So call it a 11.5-inch barrel plus 6.5, right? I'm pushing up to that overall of an 18-inch mark when I run this can on, which it's adjusted to run suppressed all the time. It is an adjustable gas block, but I run this thing dedicated suppressed. So that is my main rifle that I run quite a bit, right? And the way that it's set up. Right? to give you some other options, if you're looking for something super lightweight, this is a 13.9 inch upper. All I'm running is an Aimpoint T1 and again, a Surefire 640 turbo, right, with my switches on it. Right? This was designed to be the lightest package I could do. Why did I do a 13.9? Yes, I get a little bit more muzzle velocity than my 11.5 or my 12.5, which is my Gordon clone I don't have on this table. But I have become really fond of short dwell time gas systems. My 11.5 is a mid-length gas. This 13.9 is a mid-length gas. But to run a mid-length gas and have enough exposed barrel to run my Otter Creek Labs OCM5, I needed to push a 13.9 because to do the OTB muzzle device mount for that suppressor, I need 2.05 inches of exposed barrel past the shoulder. So the shortest I could go with a mid-gas system was a 13.9, right? I probably could have got a 13.7, but it would have made the adjustment screw on the superlative arms adjustable gas block super, super tight. It's already pretty tight how it is, so I just said, you know what, I'm gonna do a 13.9 and call it good, right? But it makes for an extremely lightweight package if you're looking for something, you know, that I don't need the additional magnification. I get a little bit more muzzle velocity. Now again, I'm running this, it's on a pistol lower, but I'll swap it onto my, you know, whatever one of my SBR lowers. I got a couple of them when I need it, right? So it works out great. Again, this was dedicated, I don't want to say dedicated build, but it was designed to be as lightweight as I could be, right? With enough muzzle exposed that I could drop my OCM5 on it, right? So it's as short as barrels I can do with mid-length gas and run this can. So again, this is about an 8.8 inch can, but it's a reflex can. So half of it, essentially 4+ inches of it, slips over the muzzle device and over the barrel. So I'm only adding about 4 inches, brings me out to like 17 and change, almost 18 inches. But it makes for a very lightweight package, even suppressed. You know, everything you need, quality dot, quality light. I did have some backup irons on here. I stripped them off and threw them on something else. I probably need to find another set or order another set to get them on here because I do like having backup iron sights for dots. Just something I haven't got around to in the last couple of weeks. But it's super light and it's really nice, very, very quiet and soft shooting. So 13.9, more muzzle velocity, lighter weight setup, right? But it works out pretty well for me. If you're wanting something that's kind of a happy medium, right? Thinking, hey, I don't necessarily want to do an SBR, you know, or I want more range of engagement versus just having something that's super CQB. Honestly, one of the best all-around happy mediums, in my opinion, is getting a 14.5, right? You can get a 14.5 pinned and welded muzzle device that will reach that 16-inch mark, so you don't have to have a, you know, registered SBR lower. Or you just do a Form 1 and have an SBR lower and run 14.5 with whatever muzzle device you want. So this was my primary rifle for many, many years. Daniel Defense M4 A1 SOCOM 14.5. Came factory with a carbine length gas system. I actually shot the barrel out of it at like 22,000 rounds. My accuracy went to crap. I was having issues. Daniel Defense had me, I talked to them. They said, send it in, it's our barrel, we will replace it free of charge. They were phenomenal. They put in not only a brand new barrel, but I asked for a mid-length gas instead of carbine. So they said, sure, we can do that. Oh, by the way, we found a leak in the gas key of your bolt carrier group, so we replaced that as well for you. Customer service was absolutely awesome, which you expect when you're buying a top-tier product like Daniel Defense. But this is set up in a very similar fashion to my 11.5 with a magnified. Right, I got a 4-power ACOG with a piggyback red dot on top, right? Obviously this ACOG, not variable power, fixed 4, and a very short eye relief. Probably one of the bigger downsides to the ACOG versus the Trijicon Credo or the AccuPowers that are LPVOs that have a little bit longer eye relief, right? So I'm running a this one is a Geisley Super Dynamic 3-gun. And this one, a Steiner D-Ball D2, so I can still run my nods. Same thing with the dot, right? If I want long-range engagement, I can run my ACOG for magnification. I get a little bit more range with the 14.5 muzzle velocities. But if I want CQB work or I'm running my night vision, just like the other rifle, my 11.5. This dot just comes right up and allows me to keep my head upright for when I'm running night vision devices with my helmet mounts. 14.5 is a phenomenal setup. You know, I don't want to say it's the end all beat all of rifle lengths, but it does great at longer ranges for normal defensive engagements, but it's very handy in a CQB type environment as well. So that is one of my other setups. It's probably my, it was my primary before I built my 11.5, and it's my number 2 setup if I need to switch to something a little bit longer. You don't have to go super short though. You don't have to go SBR route. For the vast majority of people, getting a 16-inch will be totally sufficient for what they're doing. So this is a Geisley Super Duty LE series. So it was their special run of law enforcement line rifles. So it's a combination of Geisley and ALG parts, which is owned by Geisley. But it made it very affordable, and it was available only to law enforcement with proper credentials. Running an Arkin LH4, just playing around with some of the lower end, but still decent quality LPVOs. Versus always going Trijicon or Night Force on stuff, whatever. But 16 inches gets the job done, right? Without a doubt. Yes, you got longer muzzle, muzzle length, so you're getting higher velocities, longer engagement distances. But for most defensive uses, you are not going to be engaging where it really matters out to 400, 500, right? Even 300 to 350. Very unlikely for defensive use of a carbine, right? So the other thing about this is when you start throwing a 6.5-inch suppressor on a 16-inch barrel, you're getting to that M16A2 plus range, right? 20 inches for an M16, you're looking at 22 inches, right? It's getting out there. So yes, you can kind of manage this in tight spaces, bumping it up over your shoulder and whatnot, and it's doable. I've run a 16-inch with a can inside of a car, and it is completely doable if you know the right techniques to do it. However, it can be a little bit more unwieldy in a CQB type environment where you want a little bit more maneuverability because you got so much length sticking out the end of the rifle. So that's where the 14.5, if you don't want to go SBR, pinned and welded muzzle device, kind of splits that happy medium of giving you a little shorter overall length versus a 16-inch when you're running a suppressor. Don't have a sling set up on this one. This is kind of a, I don't want to say a backup toy when it's a loaner one. I give to students in classes if they need it, but a fantastic rifle. So again, some of the different setups I have and why I set them up that way, pros and cons. Excuse me. From, everything that's a true dedicated defensive rifle should have a good quality light on it, right? I like mod light. I got a couple of rifles sitting over on the wall that have, my MP5 and a couple others have mod lights on them, my FALs. Surefire turbos, they'll rival a mod light all day long. I do like the mount system with the 640 dual fuel turbos. Got a couple of those, which I really like. If you're running night vision, whatever your preference of laser is or isn't, I'm going to do another short little video on, do you really need dual? Do you really need a laser? Well, some would say yes, some would say no, not necessarily. When it comes to night vision, there's different methodologies because I grew up in the world of PVS 14s where nobody had duals out there. Right now, they're readily available. All right, to address one of the other questions that the student sent to me in an email, and again, one I get asked in classes quite a bit, about sling setups, right? Whether you aren't sure exactly what you like, you're setting up that first time rifle, whatever it is, right? There's a lot of good slings out there on the market. I am partial, just always have been, to the Viking Tactics VTAC sling developed by Kyle Lamb. It's what I deployed with the 82nd, and bought my own sling, used it, loved it, and kind of have stuck with that over the years. I got some of the Blue Force gear slings. They're great too. It's really personal preference on what you like, but there's a ton of good ones out there. Whatever sling you end up getting, I'm a huge advocate of adjustable 2-points, right? Why? Because if I have to get this thing tight to my body, whether it's to provide hands-on medical care to somebody, climb a ladder, just do whatever I need to, this keeps it nice and snug to my body, right? Without the gun flopping and wobbling everywhere. All I got to do is lengthen it out, and I can do everything I need to, right? shoulder transition, shooting, running lasers, running lights, the whole shebang, right? And do the work that I need to. So I tend to run my rifles connected at the rear of the receiver and somewhere just in front of the receiver on the rail system, right? So most of them aren't set up all the way to the front of the rail because I don't like having it in between the end of the gun and my hand as I move up and down through this area. So they tend to be a little bit closer together. I do find that I like that allows me to keep it a little bit tighter to me when I do tighten up the sling, and it gives me a little bit more versatility of movement when I have it out. I can move the rifle around a little bit easier, whether it's jumping up over the shoulder, whether it's tucking down in a real tight compressed ready, right? Doing a tempo index. It allows me to do all of those things much easier by having those two connection points, right? So that is my preference on slings. Downside, right? You do a shorter transition. Yeah, you got to do a little bit of a muzzle dip so that buttstock clears that sling and doesn't get caught and choke you out, right? Something that we go in depth in our Tac Rifle 1 class, right? So as we work on the steps of that proper, safe, and efficient shoulder switch. The other options that you can do if you don't want to connect it to the rear of the receiver is, right, just going on the back end of the buttstock, or in this case, this pistol brace here, right? I'm still connected in a similar spot toward the back end of the rail, a little bit in front of the receiver, right? Still set up. This is not a VTAC, but it's a copy, a cheaper copy. I'm tired of buying $60 and $70 slings all the time. So I got a couple various versions of the VTAC sling for rifles that I don't shoot all the time, right? I can lengthen it out. When you're attaching it, attach it to the outside, right, away from your body, because that does keep that stock brace, whatever you're running, tighter to your body versus having it kick out. If I'm on the inside, it wants to kick out in a way, right? It still allows me to hold it pretty tight to the body. Doesn't wiggle and move a whole lot, right? The nice thing is if you are running it on the buttstock or on the outside of the brace, right, if you're in the pistol braced lower, is when you're doing a shoulder transition, it's just a straight across. You don't have to do a little muzzle dip or anything. You're not going to choke yourself out. You can literally just come straight across here, finish your shoulder switch, and do what you need to. So there is an advantage to that. There's also an advantage if you end up putting it on your back, right? Swimming out of the sling and swimming across here, right? By having it on the buttstock, it is going to keep that rifle a little bit more vertical up and down if you have to throw it over to your back for whatever reason that you might have to, right? You can do that when you're connected to the rear of the receiver. It just moves around a little bit more than it does when you are connected back here on the stock. The nice thing is if you're using QD attachments, right, which I use on almost all of mine, if I feel the need for whatever I'm doing to run something, or like, you know what, I don't want it here, I want this tighter in my body, all I got to do is go from here to here, and I can set it up however which way I want, right, based on if it's mission dependent, what I'm doing, versatility. I know I'm going to be going to my back a lot, so I want that sling to hold a little bit tighter. Doesn't take but a second, boom, boom, and it's however I want it to be set up. But that's kind of my preference on how I set my slings up. Light switches, you know, if you're gonna run that light, I like having all my light switches right on top. It allows me to run it ambidextrous, right? So whatever my forward hand is, boom, I can run my light, not a problem here. If I end up switching, it's in the exact same spot for my other hand, right? I can run that light without having any issues activating that switch, and my light's positioned in a manner that I'm not interfering with my grip in the front end of the rifle either. So I like having them kind of offset to the side, elevated a little bit so I don't cast a ton of shadow, versus being on the bottom or completely at the 9 o'clock or the 3 o'clock. Those are my two preferences. So I'll wrap it up a little bit about how my rifles are set up. If you got specific questions, you can drop comments in there, all right? Email TDI, at tdiohio@gmail.com if you have additional questions that you don't want to post in the comments. Hope to see you in 2026. Rifle classes, they're out. The schedule's out there. Everything's out there. Should be a pretty good year. We got some fun stuff coming our way. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll try and get some more videos out as soon as I can, between kids' sports events, life, and everything else. But stay safe, and we hope to see you on the range in 2026. It is December, so we're about a week out from Christmas. Everybody have a safe and very Merry Christmas and a safe New Year's. Thanks.